Welcome to Feminist Founders, a podcast that explores how to create a more equitable world through entrepreneurship. I'm your host, coach and journalist Becky Mollenkamp. Feminist Founders is a listener-funded podcast. Your contributions enable me to continue bringing you these important conversations without corporate advertising. To support the mission, head to feministfounderspodcast.com and sign up for a paid subscription. The link is in the show notes. Now, on to today's show. Welcome back. Today, I am joined by Zia Dione. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you where we talk about Trunk of My Car Cooperative, which is an organization that she has started to challenge Amazon KDP, to challenge the on-demand printing services that are out there, to do things in a way that is anti-capitalist, that is people first and people centric. It's everything that we try to talk about here. And so I'm really excited for you to listen to this episode. We also talk about how Zia got her name because it's not her birth name, and the story of how she changed it is really beautiful. She's also, in addition to being a writer who focuses on healing intergenerational trauma and building solidarity economies, which is a lot of what we talk about with Trunk of My Car Creative, or Trunk of My Car Cooperative. She is also certified in permaculture design and has a law degree, which we talk about that as well, how law goes to what she's doing now. There's a theme I've noticed with a lot of people who used to be in law and now are doing something different. It says a lot about that industry and how not built for women and folks with marginalized identities that field is, which is a problem in and of itself. But that's only a piece of what we talk about here today, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Zia. Hello, Zia. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. Well, I'm going to start with the same question as always, which is tell me about your relationship with feminism.
Feminism is a weird word for me because I kind of grew up in the Alice Walker school of thought about womanism, which is it's more of an inclusive way of looking at feminism because what feminism has been historically in this country typically excludes people who look like me. I would like us to be able to get to a point where we don't have to segregate ourselves based on our genders, to where we all of our voices make a difference. All of our voices matter. I'm all for us standing up as women and being more active, being a 50% role. Since we make up half the population, I think we should definitely step up and take more spaces of leadership. I feel like what's happened to the planet has a lot to do with this imbalance of leadership. Do I define myself as a feminist? Probably not. Am I a womanist? A little bit. I think I'm a humanist, and I hope we can get our shit together.
I identify as an intersectional feminist, but ultimately what we're saying, I think, is the same thing. Yeah. And if humanist is the thing that nails the head on it, or hits the nail on the head, then I'm for that.
Yeah.
But that's why I like to share, because it is so different for everyone. And I think it's so important, most especially for the white listeners, which I think makes up a good portion of this listenership, to hear from women of color.
Yeah.
And actually, I've been trying to hear from women of the global majority. I've been really trying to switch my language there.
Okay. Thank you.
To hear about these differences and understand that. Yeah. Because often I think a lot of feminists who are white think that feminist just naturally means everyone. And I think intersectional feminist aims to do that, but there are many people who identify as feminists who are not aligned with us, the J.K. Rowlings of the world and others. So it's just really good to have that conversation. Okay. Now, you mentioned right before we started recording that you changed your name not long ago or some point.
I did.
And I want to know about that. I love hearing from women who've changed their name.
Yeah, I'm writing about it in my memoir. I'm currently I'm finishing my last semester, going into my last semester of my MFA in Creative Nonfiction. And so to get the full story, you'll have to read the book. But I think it was in 2020. I started feeling like this disconnect from this name that I was given. And it actually started with my last name. And just like with everything that was happening in the world, we had time. And I started just like, was it, I think it was like ancestry stuff that we were all talking about. And so my birth name is Rachel Marie Walls, right? Like if you Google Rachel Walls, let me tell you how many Black women show up. None. So, except it used to be me, but we've taken care of that. But the last name Walls, I really started like, wait a minute, it's a British last name. How did my family get a British last name? And I didn't want that anymore. Um, and I started thinking that like there should be a way for all of us who are descendants of enslaved people. There should be a free way for us to just change our names, like if we wanted to, like nothing mandatory, but if you no longer want to associate and, be like part of that, to just like choose what you want. Um, but then last year, I live in Hawaii and I lived on Maui for a while. And before the fires, I moved to Oahu. And last January or February, whatever, 2023, I was driving to the airport. Got there early, and I'm not the type of person who gets to the airport early. Like, I think my flight was supposed to leave at like 7:45 that morning, and like at 7 o'clock, I'm freaking out because I think I'm too early. Um, so I'm like, I'm not going to just go sit at the gate. So I go get a coffee. As I'm driving by, okay, so first of all, let me back up a little bit. I'm like totally spirit led. Like I'm a free spirit. I like, I don't know, I guess I'm in tune with the universe in some ways. So I see this guy, this unsheltered man standing past the coffee truck I stopped at. Something in my spirit said, go buy him breakfast. So I'm like, I got time. Do a U-turn, go back, and I start talking to him. And he tells me his name is Shoestring. And like his cart, like how he was, like everything about him, like he was gorgeous, just gorgeous, beautiful, beautiful man. Like um Native Hawaiian. He had his hair up in these dreadlocks, like in a bun. Just beautiful soul. He's like, what's your name? And I'm like, Rachel. And he like looks down at the ground and starts shaking his head like, nah. So he looks back up at me and he's like, yeah, that's nice and all, but what's your real name? And I'm sitting there like, sir, I just came to buy you breakfast. Why you call me out like this? So I got on the flight, came to Oahu to go look for a place to rent. I like that whole day was just a wash for me. Like I wasted money, but I gained something. And so then I came back and I started thinking about it and thinking about it. And I had just started my MFA, and my advisor at the time I told him that I was thinking about changing my name. And he gave me one of the best pieces of advice that I think someone could have given me. He told me not to choose a name that represents what I am, but to choose a name that represents what I could be. Because if you choose a name that represents what you are, you stay stagnant. So I initially was going to choose the name Adri. And that was because a 4-year-old boy gave it to me years ago. I told him my name was, he was told to call me Auntie Rachel. And from Rachel, he got Adri. So then it was my niece's daycare. And then all of the other kids started calling me Adri, Auntie Adri. And so now my sister and my niece, they call me Auntie Adri, but something about it didn't sit right. And so I just kept living and kept listening. And then I heard Zia. It's a symbol of that New Mexico has appropriated from a native tribe there. But it's also like in so many other languages. It's not limited to one. In Latin, in Arabic, in Hebrew, I think, like so many different cultures, it means light and resonance. And Um, when I think about like what I want to be, why not aspire to be like it
And the
resonates.
Dione?
The Dione, okay, so it's actually pronounced Dione, but I go with Dion because Dione is Saturn's fourth moon. Um, I was looking for a name that represented like my relationship with nature. Like I talk to trees and shit. Like I have tree friends. I'm a nature girl. I'm an earth girl. I'm so earth. I was born on Earth Day, yo. Um, and so I wanted something that represented that. And I just like the names that I was coming up with, like it just didn't fit. So then I was like, maybe my relationship with the planet is bigger than just the planet. And it's this like this universal thing. And so what in the universe? And I just kept living and letting it come. And then I saw that and I saw Dione in reference to being the mother of Dionysus and Aphrodite. And that's love and pleasure. Like who doesn't want that in their life? And then it's this also, there's this balance in the name because Zia means light, but the moon is like usually associated with dark. So like there's this balance of light and dark. That's who I am. That's who I want to be.
I know this was a lot on a name, but
Yeah.
it must have felt very empowering and liberating to name
Mm-hmm.
yourself. I love
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
And not to get too practical with something that's such a beautiful story, but also I just think it really applies for business owners thinking about naming their businesses and thinking about not just what is your business, what do you want your business to be? What do you want it to mean? And I love that, like that thinking about just all of the things of like, what do you want it to be and mean in the world? You mentioned that you are in your MFA program, you're nearly finished.
Yes.
Maybe by the time
Yes.
this comes out, you will be finished. And I would love to hear a little bit about like your journey of what took you to the MFA program. I'm not going to make big assumptions, but I don't think you're 18. So I don't think you're right out of,
No.
you're not first going into college or just out of your
Mm-hmm.
undergrad. So it sounds like a choice that you made to go back to school and get an MFA. So what made you make that choice and what were you hoping to get from the program?
I guess this is that point where everybody has to know, like, I'm weird. Like, I hear this voice, and I've pretty much followed it since 2010. I actually have a law degree. I'm way beyond 18. I got a couple of 18s in me. Um, um, yeah, in 2010, I started hearing this voice. I got lost in Mexico, and that voice got me found. I ended up on the wrong bus. My Spanish was trash at the time. And I end up in this town called Quiroga in Michoacan, which is like maybe like 2 hours from Morelia. And I need to be in a town called Erangarecuaro. And I get off the bus and I'm like, fuck. Like everybody told me not to come to Mexico by myself. But look at me. And I get off the bus and I hear this voice that says cross the street. And I like looking around like, what is this? It was this um, loud voice. And like, I'm thinking everybody else heard it, but you know, I could be crazy. Tells me to cross the street, so I do. Like, what else am I going to do? I don't speak Spanish. I'm in this town where nobody probably speaks English. Like, what am I going to do? Um, I get across the street and I'm like, now what? It said go left. So I went left and I kept walking, kept walking, kept walking, and I end up at a taxi stand. There's one driver sitting there. This is like late on a Sunday night. One driver in there. He speaks English. He drove me to an Angada. And then a couple months later, that same voice told me to go. And so I quit my job. I worked at a big firm in DC. I was just a staff attorney, like nothing major, just on staff there. And I sold all my stuff in July 2011 and just started traveling. I liked writing at the time, but I wasn't really serious about it. But I think in 2012, I was in Barcelona because, yeah, I went wherever my spirit told me to go. And I ended up in Barcelona. I wrote my first poem because I had a bad meal. I went to this restaurant called Picnic, and it was like the number one rated like place for brunch in Barcelona at the time. It might still be. Like, please don't sue me, y'all. But I mean, come on now. It was supposed to be a southern U.S. like soul food type spot, sir. Those fried green tomatoes, I still remember them. I was so disappointed. And the chili and the cornbread, like, sir, like, do y'all need me to come back there and help y'all? Because I can't. But I just walked away and I just started saying it really was no picnic. And then that became like my first poem. And so I kept traveling, kept living. And then after the pandemic, during the pandemic, I really started writing. Like, I wrote a whole novel during the pandemic. It's trash. And maybe one of these days, now that I have skills, I can fix it. But it's called All Fuckboys Must Die.
I mean, I want to read it just based on the title, so I hope you can
Yeah.
fix it.
I think I can. One of these days, when I have some time after this program ends, I think I will. But I wrote that. And then like looking at what was happening in the world, I decided that maybe I should go back to school. But I got into a program, and I'm not going to name it. They know who they are, for restorative justice, because I thought that that's what I wanted to do. And it was like, honestly, it was like a bunch of white people who felt guilty. And like, how do we go into neighborhoods where Black people are and help them? And I'm like, you know how to do that? Start in your own home. Like, everything that's happening to us is because of what's happening where you are. And until you can face that, stay out of our communities. And I was the angry Black woman in my class. And I was about to order a sash that said angry Black woman. Like, do I need to get it out of my pocket and wear it? Like, because like just all of the statistics that they were listing were like, you gotta, like drug use and all that. And I'm like, have you seen drug use in rich white neighborhoods? Because I have. I've been in those neighborhoods. They just don't get caught because the police ain't looking for them. But
Oxycontin is a drug.
just because they got your name on the bottle don't mean it's not a drug. Alcohol is a drug. Let's get real. And so I'm having these conversations and nobody wants to have them with me. So I dropped out like 5 weeks into a 2-year program. I dropped out and was like, this is a waste of time. I just wish I had dropped out like a week sooner so I got a slight tuition refund. But, you know, I tried and I was like, I still want to do something. And then I got this idea for this cooperative, like this self-publishing cooperative. That same voice gave me this idea for a cooperative. And then it was kind of like, okay, I started getting the ball rolling on that. And then it was like, okay, go to school. And it led me to a specific school. And I still like don't understand why I'm there yet, but I kind of know why I'm there. Because I'm really outspoken and I speak on things that other people tend to like not and just like sweep under the rug. So I'm still wearing the sash. But it's not to disparage, it's to shine a light. Let's get back to the name, to shine a light on where we're missing the mark, where we recruit people from diverse backgrounds and then don't do what is needed to make those relationships be what they be. Like, to just invite us in and then like let us be abused. Like, no. Protect us if you want us in these spaces.
It's interesting because you ended up in an MFA program.
Yeah, right?
Instead of an MBA program.
Oh.
I think for many people, if they have a business idea, you have this idea for, which we're going to talk about, trunk of my car, and you have this idea for a business, whatever form that business takes. Most people, I think, would naturally kind of go to like, well, then I should get an MBA. If I'm going to go back to school, I'll get an MBA so I can learn how to run a business, blah, blah, blah. And instead you went with the route of your intuition or whatever you want to call that voice told you, no, you get an MFA, which might seem illogical, but it wasn't the voice of logic. It was this voice of this internal knowing. And I'm a huge fan of the voice of internal knowing.
Okay.
So there must be some reason, right? And I'm wondering, because you're not, obviously you're not then getting the business, here's how you make $1 million at running your business, but I also saw the cringe, and I feel the cringe. It's not why, I don't think that's what you want in a business. It's not what you're there for. So my guess is the reason that you're not in an MBA, like your intuition didn't tell you, is because you would have been getting all of the shit advice that none of us want about how to run a business in a capitalist system that's just perpetuating those problems. So in the MFA, you are working on Trunk of My Car, or are you working on your book, or is it both?
This is me learning how to write a book. And it's not for me. It's so that I can help other people write books. People who don't go to MFA programs, people who don't want to go to MFA programs and put themselves through this. That's why I think that's why I needed this, but also to like write my story, because my story is like, it's an interesting one. I have a law degree and with a business concentration. My undergrad was in business. I've run businesses. And let me tell you, everything that I learned did not work in those spaces. And even before I got on this path of like shunning what I learned in DC and everything, I was already doing things differently. Like I used to manage billing departments for healthcare providers in the DC area and some office management stuff. And you know how like you have these job descriptions, and I'm like in my early 20s and I'm the manager for a plastic surgery dermatology spot. And I looked at the job descriptions, like our two main people in the office were so unhappy. And I figured out why. They didn't like parts of their jobs. So I took all of the duties that were needed to be done between the two of them, and I let them pick what they wanted. Anything that was left, I'll do it. Do you understand what that did to productivity and happiness? And it's like, why don't we do that more in business? Because it's they take the people and want the people to fit into this like line by line item. And we're not line by line. We're so complex. And I don't believe that work should be a space where you dread to go. Like people deserve to be happy doing what they do. Like, let's make this a even and fair exchange. And so like in my early 20s, I was already like fighting and standing up and walking out and cursing folks out. Like I was already there and seeing that something with how we do things in business isn't right. And so why would I go pay money to learn how to do it a little bit more? Like
I've had several, or maybe even many at this point, recovering or former lawyers on this show. And it's interesting, law, especially I think for women, and probably even more so for people of the global majority, really just seems like it churns and spits people out. Like it just does not feel like of so many industries. I think medical's up there too, but lawyers seem to really be taken advantage of. Like you're in this race to get to this elusive partnership where things, I guess, are supposed to all get better. But like the amount of hours and the shit that people put up with is unbelievable. So many people seem to leave, most especially not white men. Like the non-white men are leaving because it's awful.
I didn't go to a big school, but I'm a damn good lawyer. And so I didn't get considered for a lot of jobs because I didn't go to the right school. And I'm a first generation college graduate, first generation law graduate. Like none of I'm my grandmother's 21st grandchild. I was the first one to go to college and get degrees. Now, some of my other cousins, like let me shout y'all out, they have gone back and gotten theirs too. So, but that's where I come from. So I didn't know any better, like navigating this stuff. And I had a kid when I was 16. So I dropped out of high school. I dropped out of school after 8th grade. So I had a lot of things working against me. And I didn't believe in myself at the time. So I just kind of like let myself take what I could get. As far as jobs, and my first job out of law school, I was so embarrassed by this, but now it's hilarious. And I signed an NDA, but I don't care about it. I got fired from my first job as a lawyer, and I had never been fired before, but I accidentally called my boss a bitch. She told me I should have done something a different way, and I was really kind about the way I handled a personnel matter. And she was yelling at me, telling me what I should have did, and I just stopped her and said, "Yeah, I guess I would have done that if I was a bitch like you." So they fired me, and you get that on your mark and people don't want to work with you. And so I took another job where I worked in healthcare law. Um, and it was so racist. It was so racist. Like, it was like, yo, they put me in the basement, first of all. And they put this ragtag desk together. It was random pieces of furniture, driftwood and shit. And they had me sitting in that. And then they brought in this other woman, another attorney. She got brand new stuff. And I just went to work one morning and clocked out, cleaned out my desk, and went home. And so from that, like, I got these two strikes on me. I didn't have anything else I could do. So I started doing doc review. And it's one of those things where you look down on fast food workers as you're standing on the other side of the counter, like, make yourself make sense. Um, so I started doing that, and I was really good at it. But after 2 years, my soul felt dirty. And I made really good money, and I thought I had like a good quality of life, but I was miserable. And so I quit.
The first question that comes up for me and probably other people is like, how did you make ends meet? Because we live in capitalism. You have to have money to like survive and travel and all of that. How are you making ends meet between that time when you quit that job and now?
Well, I had some savings. This was in 2011. Savings is long, long gone. So I lived off of that for like the first year and a half. And then whenever I needed money, like the universe just, something would happen. I got some, like, I've done like legal research. Like, I do mostly remote stuff. I've worked for a commercial leasing company. I had a baking business when I lived in Puerto Rico. Like, I've done what I had to do. I've been a nanny. I don't think that like I'm above anything. Like, I know I'm intelligent. I know I have a lot to offer, but I'm not above anything. When you're open to what how the universe wants to bless you, it will show you, it will tell you, it will give you. And
it's important for me, I think, as a white woman to acknowledge that there's lots of privilege inside of my ability to say that. But I love that you are showing, like, leaving school in 8th grade and having a baby at 16 and all that has come since then. And so much of it sounds like it really is because of, like, you credit your spirituality or whatever it is, your belief, which is lovely.
It is not me.
And you said in 2010 is when you started to really like lean into listening to that voice. Mm-hmm. Is there something that you can share about what happened around that time?
That was the Mexico thing. Oh. Before that, I know it was there. Like, when I look back at certain things that like I got protected from, certain things that got taken away from me, certain doors that got closed in my face, I know it was already looking out for me, but it needed me to look out for it, right?
I want to make sure that we get to Trunk of My Car because we're talking a lot about your story, but I think it's important because I think it informs so much of what Trunk of My Car is, or you want it to be, this vision that you're holding. So tell people about it's self-publishing, but self makes it sound very isolated, right? It's about cooperatively self-publishing, so that it's self-publishing inside of community. So what does that look like? And it's a collective, right? And what does that mean?
Yeah. Cooperatives have been around since, like, I think they're older than the United States, for real. And so it is a cooperative. It's a multi-stakeholder cooperative, meaning that it's owned by everyone who wants to own. Like, there's no requirement that you own to be a part of this community, but if you want to, you can. And so we came up with this idea of circles instead of, like, usually in cooperatives, they're owned by like membership classes. And when you think about the word class and what that denotes, there's like this hierarchy. And I just didn't like, I don't like the way it feels. It's the language thing. Language is so important. So I went with circles. So we have these circles, and we have circles of readers, we have circles of creators, and we have circles of the people who work. We haven't launched yet. It has been a lonely journey. Um, I've been at it for 2 years now, but we're almost there. But by the time this comes out, we'll be operating. So there's that. But we've been pushing back and pushing back. And um, because we want to come right. And it would be easy to just throw it together. But that's not what this new thing, this new world that's being birthed needs. I do believe in divine timing. And so I feel like a lot of the setbacks we've had have been because God, the universe, source, whatever you want to call it, is like, not yet. Like, just not yet, but keep going. So that's what it's about. It's also something that like I heard it. Um, Back in 2017, I was in Vegas at the MGM about to go see Stevie Wonder. And I'm sitting outside the bar, and Michael Baisden, who used to have a like nationally syndicated radio show, and he's an author, Men Cry in the Dark, what? Maintenance Man, like he had all of those books back in the day. And so we just talking, and I'm telling him that I write a little bit, because at the time I was in Taos, and I was like teaching, voluntary teaching poetry to sixth, seventh, and eighth graders. The stuff we were able to get out of those babies, yo. The healing that happened in those classrooms. And so I'm telling him about this, and he's like, well, when I started writing, I sold my books from the trunk of my car. 2022, I'm on Maui still, and I'm like washing dishes. And I remembered that conversation. And it was like this strong, like this presence in me, that conversation like did something in my body. And I was like, I got to do something with this. So I run to my laptop and I Google trunk of my car. And I'm like looking to see if authors are still doing this. And they are. And I was like, okay, let me see, like, let me buy the domain and just see. Like, I bought the domain, I bought the .com, the .org. And I didn't know why. I kind of just left it alone. And at the time, I was helping some midwives out here get organized. And they wanted to know how the best way to serve their community. And I was like, a co-op. Because Hawaii had just passed a consumer cooperative law that gives you a little bit more protections. And the thing about the Hawaii statute that I love so much, the preamble to the act, said that things of nature can be members of the cooperative. So, like, we can have a membership that is, we can have members that are trees. We can have members that is the air. And so we want to make sure that these living beings that are affected by what we do have a say in what we do. So we're going to like assign people to vote for their interests.
And I think especially when we think about publishing, trees should really have a say.
Yeah, right. Thank you for that one, because that's new. But so I was helping them, and then it just hit me one day. Trunk of my car needs to be a cooperative, because like I did self-publish a book back in 2012. Please don't look for it, Lord, it's so bad. But I was like, I needed to get it out. I went to Morocco to learn discipline, and I went for Ramadan, and I observed Ramadan it was in 2012. I went and observed Ramadan, and in those 30 days of Ramadan, I unraveled my dreadlocks. That was my second set of dreadlocks. I sat there and unraveled all of them. I wrote an entire 235-page book. I was creating recipes in my mind. I was in the most creative space I had ever been in my life, but I did it alone. I had to do it alone. And not only did I do it alone and did not know what I was doing, I put it on Amazon, and they changed the price whenever they wanted to. They've changed this, but you used to be able to read these Kindle ebooks and return them. Authors were losing money because people were treating these Kindle books like library books. And lo and behold, ebooks are the only digital item that can be returned. Go figure. Movies can't be returned. Songs can't be returned. but books can. What's up with that? So I just started thinking about all of this and started talking to a couple other people. When you think about like the history of this country, and I highly have suggested this to everybody who comes to work with me, to read the book called Collective Courage by Dr. Jessica Gordon Nimhart. I want to do something called, and I wanted to talk to you about this. So here we are. The idea of doing like collective courage conversations. We get together and we talk about the book and how it applies, because it's a history of Black cooperatives in the United States. And like mutual aid, they started like post enslavement, because how else were we supposed to make it? What else were we going to do? We had to learn, we had to work together because we were all we had. You know, you're coming out of this system where you have nothing. How did you make it? Right? Each other. But what we're living in now is so individualistic. And when I was traveling, I saw something different. Like the first place I went when I left DC, I was in Costa Rica. And in Costa Rica, they call themselves Ticos. And what I saw with Ticos is they share. So if you know your neighbor next door doesn't have any food and all you have is a cup of rice, you give that neighbor half of your cup of rice, right? If you live here, you don't even know your neighbor next door.
You go out of your way to not know your neighbor.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, we live in these little neighborhoods where you drive home, you pull into your garage, the garage door shuts, and you're in your home, and there's no communication.
And every country I went to after that, I saw it. I saw it over and over again, how people take care of each other. And when I was in Morocco, the caretaker for the property I rented, he invited me to their house for iftar, which is a dinner that you break your fast with at the end of the day. Him, his wife, and his daughter sat me there and watched me eat. They didn't eat all day either. And they sat there and watched me eat and then packed up most of the food and sent it home with me. And then I came out here. I ended up in Hawaii in 2014. I did not want to move here because I was like, it's too expensive. Like, it's way too expensive. I've been taken care of out here. In 2015, when I came, I needed a car because the family that I was nannying for they moved back to the Bay, and I was going to go with them, but then decided that I needed to stay a little bit longer. And so I stayed, and I needed a car. And a friend of a woman I just met, she's one of my best friends now. Like, she's my emergency contact, and she don't even know it yet. But when she listens to this, she gonna find out. She knows she'll know who I'm talking about. But her husband had a used car lot, and I ain't had no job. I ain't have no credit, like nothing. He financed a car for me out of his pocket, didn't charge me any interest, let me work some of it off. Didn't know me from Adam and did that, right? Where else does that happen?
America is so hyper individualized. It's just not the spirit here. And you brought up Amazon, which to me feels so part and parcel of that, because it's a company that has one person who has more wealth than 90% of the people on earth. And then all these people who are working hard, often dying for various reasons, because of heat while delivering, or because of a shoddy building that they're working inside of and a tornado knocks it down. That was very nearby where I live in St. Louis. Not to mention just the system that is involved in exploiting or extracting money from the people who are selling on that platform. So as you mentioned, the markups, Amazon takes all this money and gives you this tiny portion of this money. There's so many ways that it screws over the people that are selling on their marketplace. Mm-hmm. So what's different about your vision? So let's say that I have a book that I want to self-publish, because let's be honest, self-publishing is more and more common now because of
$1.25 billion
there you
industry.
go. Because traditional publishing is now to the place where they basically only want to work with people who have giant platforms. You have to have millions of followers. You have to do all your own marketing work, right? That's why they want to work with people with giant followings, because they no longer want to put any money in marketing. They expect you to do all the marketing, and then they're going to take their their profits off of this book. They hardly pay advances anymore. When they do, they're not big. So everything about that industry sucks at this point. It's not what it used to be. It's very hard to try and get a book deal. You have to pay a lot of money to ever get your book published, just through book editing and book getting an agent and all the things. So a lot of people are like, I can't do all of that. And even if I could, they're not going to look at me. So I have to self-publish, or I want to self-publish. And when people talk about self-publishing, the first thing they talk about is Amazon, right?
Because
KDP.
there's not many options.
They make it easy. KDP, I've done it. They make it very easy. They make it very easy. But they also screw you over in the process.
There's that.
And it's certainly not personal. I've never talked to a person at Amazon, and I have something, I have a KDP, a book, a workbook on there that you can buy. So what is different? If I were to take that same workbook or book, what would be different? What's the experience like?
Number one, we want it to be easy. I've been resistant to building in like the same capitalist ideals. And I've seen it with other cooperatives. It's just like new packaging in some ways. So we've been very intentional about what we're putting into this. And so what that looks like is, number one, we're not doing like a huge buy-in. Like most cooperatives have these huge buy-ins that become unaffordable to most people. And so we're doing like just monthly dues. So you can own as you want, if that makes sense. But the longer that you own, the greater your profit sharing is, right? So we've come up with a system that we're trying to reduce our cost of operations as much as possible, so that more of what we make together goes back to the people who are actually doing it. So that's number one. There's ownership here. One person, one vote. You can't buy more votes. You can belong to multiple circles, but you can't. You don't get extra votes because of that. So there's not this one person at the top. There's no pyramid. These are all circles, and they kind of come together. This like Venn diagram of sorts. I actually have a Venn diagram of like how these three things come together. From there, if you are an owner, you retain 90% of sales from your book. If you don't sign away your rights to sell your book in other places, and if you make them exclusive, I think you get 70%. But if you want to sell your book other places, you only get 35%. So we're 90% if you're an owner. If you're not an owner, you still get 75%. So you still can participate. We want to make things affordable. Like on Amazon, they give you an ISBN. And if you're a self-publisher and you don't want to sell on Amazon and you need an ISBN, they're like $125 each. And like, do y'all know in other countries, you don't have to pay for an ISBN? They do this to like...
Interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, Canada, they don't pay for ISBNs. But Bowker, the system here, they get rich off of it. And so what we've been able to do, like you can't sell an ISBN, but if you post your book with us, you can get ISBNs from us. Thanks to a generous donation, we have a block of ISBNs, and we don't sell the ISBNs. We do charge an administrative fee for registering your book's information with Bowker, but we don't charge you for the ISBN. And so for our members, it's $5. For non-members, I think it's either 15 or 25. I need to look at it, but huge difference from $125. The other thing is if you're in community with writers and readers, and other creators, like the creator circle isn't limited to writers. It's also for book art designers. It's for editors to come. It's for small presses to come. So for all of these different aspects to have one platform where we can all boost each other, And I think how we connected on Threads was me saying that this idea of offers and needs. And so we're creating an offers and needs market where and a author could say, I need help with this. And somebody else can come and say, I can do this. And however you want to come together to make that transaction is good, but we encourage bartering. Because you know what? Bartering is not taxable. Look at that. And so the more ways that we can withdraw from the system that exploits to a system that builds, that's what we're trying to do. And so then in addition to having people who can help you create the book, we are also owned by readers. Readers membership dues aren't as much as authors. I think we're, like authors right now, we're asking $10 a month. 2 coffees, what? Readers $5 a month. Readers automatically get 15% off of all books immediately. No discount if you're not decide not to be a member, and that's fine. So this is kind of like having that cup of rice and breaking it down for however many people need it, right? But if you like, so I'm going back, I'm off track. But if you're an author, and you know, a lot of authors struggle to find like alpha and beta readers and ARC readers and all of that. If you're part of this community, guess what we got built in? Readers, right? So all of these aspects of publishing, and then collectively we can market. I'm better in like quiet spaces, and the social media for me is like hard. But if I don't have to do that on my own, and somebody else who's also a part of the collective has seen my efforts can clap me up too, and they can share their own cup of rice. You know what I mean? So we all give what we can. Like I can give help with copyright protection, right? I can give help with, you know, contracts and that sort of thing. So I can give that. I can give what I've learned out in the world, and share that with the community. And so like, it just, I see it as like us coming together and I have this, what do you have?
Is it a sustainable business model? Because obviously it doesn't have to make a ton of money, but it has to be able to sustain itself so that you can continue to function. And I'm assuming that work you've been looking at, and does it feel sustainable?
I believe so. I won a fellowship last year and with the Workers Lab, their innovation fund. It gave me some time to like really think about like how to make sure that it's sustainable. But I had also worked with a SCORE mentor. It's free. So like, I actually got a woman who is here in Hawaii, and she's a former American Airlines executive. And she didn't know anything about cooperatives. And so I taught her about cooperatives, and she helped me like figure out how to make that work with a business plan to where it is sustainable. And so, like I said, like we're keeping our costs as low as possible. Right now, it's just 2 of us working. We at tech and operations. Here we are. Neither of us are interested in getting rich. Like I would like to live comfortably, but we don't get paid until the business is sustainable. So, and she gets paid before I do. And all of these are set in stone. And the membership dues go to keep us operating. And then the 10% of the remaining royalty, that gets put into a pot. And at the end of the year, we hope to be able to, like, that's our profit. Like, whatever we have, like, that's our profit. And we can redistribute that. Because, like, when you get your check from Amazon, girl,
It has to get to $10 before I get paid. So it takes a while. It's sad. Well, I think that's wonderful. I love that you have thought through how to make it sustainable, because I think what can happen is sometimes it can start to feel this either or. Either I buy into capitalism as we know it and I go all in and it's all about me and that whole individualistic Jeff Bezos world. Or I have to like go nonprofit, or I have to like just sacrifice and go live on the commune, which is also a wonderful alternative for people who want to do it. But we need to figure out how to make businesses that are challenging the norms, but that can survive and thrive and are sustainable over time, that show there is another way to do this.
The other thing about it is, number one, like I said, like we've had all of these delays and stuff. It's just honoring that and not moving in a sense where we need to get big overnight. I think organic growth is better than right now. I'm certified in permaculture design. Like in 2011, I went to Patagonia and I got certified in permaculture design. I lived on this estancia that was like 100,000 acres, inaccessible to the outside world. To get there, you had to take a 3-hour horseback ride through the Andes Mountains, through a river. Um, and I've applied a lot of those principles to how we are doing things. Because, like in nature, you don't put a seed in the ground, pour water, and poof, right? First, the seeds breaks open, then it pops up and it grows, and it may be like a season or two before you get fruit, right? So I feel like instead of this idea of like growth right now, like let's take our time, let's breathe, let's walk, let's listen. And like the person who's in tech, like we are both very, like our first conversation when we realized we could do this was all about spirit and source and trusting that. And that's been a blessing. Like working with her has been a blessing. Hey, Joanna.
It's funny that you say that about the seed because it makes me think of how in capitalism, not even that remains like even nature is no longer nature. We are fucking with that with GMOs. And how can we get that seed to create that food overnight instead of just how do we live with the systems, the natural systems as they exist, which includes our body's natural system. And I hear you saying that I think some of that is this slower intentional growth, even though it can be difficult because there is always this, like, you felt that need to even sort of apologize. But like you're honoring what feels right for you. You're honoring your body's needs too inside of all of that and not hustling and grinding and hurting yourself in the process. So that's
That's just
beautiful.
going to burn you out.
But like, we all do it. I mean, it's what we are conditioned to do. I'm not saying everyone does it, but we are conditioned to do that.
Because you go to other countries.
Right.
And like Argentina shut down from 4 to 6 every day. And then they're out. Like they eat dinner at like 10 o'clock at night. And they're out dancing in the street, drinking wine till 2 o'clock in the morning. Toddlers learning how to live. And
ours going to school and getting indoctrinated into how to be good workers for the
and I pledge allegiance, like all of that madness. Like, let's be real. What we doing? Words, spells.
Well, not to add to your sense of urgency, but do you have a new target date? When do you feel like because people who might be listening to this who are interested, like I want to be a part, I want to get in one of those circles, the circle that makes sense to me. I want to support this vision. Do you have an idea when things might be live?
After October 7th, we realized the need to implement BDS into how we built this thing. And that's been the hardest part, is finding plugins run by companies that don't support the apartheid state. And bruh, in tech, it is hard. And so we made a compromise this week that we're not super happy about, but there's a way out in the near future. I want to say like we're about a week or two away before we will send that email saying, okay, the marketplace is open.
By the time this airs, then you guys will definitely be live. So for people who are interested in saying, I want to be a part of one of those circles, whether I'm a reader, I'm a creator, what was the third category?
Worker. That means a job.
So if you're in you want to be in one of those circles, you want to be a part of the cooperative as maybe somebody who either is just supporting by buying or who's actually a member, like contributor. What are the next steps for someone to take?
You would just come to trunkofmycar.org and follow the steps from there. We've made it so simple. Our legal contracts and stuff are written in plain English. I made it so that the average person can understand what they're getting themselves into. And it's not like, 3,000 pages that, now you done gave away your firstborn child and their child and you didn't even realize it. So it's a very simple sign up process. Everything simple. Simple.
So if you're interested, you can go there and learn more.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, I ask for a resource at the end of these interviews, but you've given a couple that I think we can already talk about,
Yeah.
especially, I mean, because you've already named a couple of books, but one that you think everyone should read about
Yeah. Collective
cooperatives.
courage.
I will link to that in the
Thank
show
you.
notes. And for an organization that's doing good work in the world, the way, I mean, we can obviously, first and foremost, go support Trunk of My Car. But I know you're not actually set up as a nonprofit. And
No.
so is there an organization that's doing good work in the world that you would like to highlight?
I'm going to say look to cooperatives. I can't say that all of them are great, but I'm going to put out like multi-stakeholder cooperative organizations. So, um, moving beyond because like REI, they're a cooperative, but they're consumer cooperative. And so they're only owned by the people who buy. Versus the producers and the people who shop there. And what happened or work there, and what happened recently that they were in the news for, is their workers tried to unionize and the consumers wanted to block that. And how cooperative is that, right? So I'm going to say look to multi-stakeholder cooperatives and support them, be a part of them. Find the cooperative grocery store in your neighborhood, find the cooperative healing spaces in your neighborhood. If you want to learn more about cooperatives, if you want to build a cooperative but you don't know how, reach out to us because we're giving this information for free. The way that we've built our platform is mostly open source. We're sharing it for free because we believe.
Thank you so much for your
No
time, Zia.
worries.
We're going to do some bonus content. I don't know what
Okay.
it's going to be yet. So
Okay.
go head over to the newsletter and find out whatever we decide to talk about. Thank you, Zia, for doing this. I really appreciate it.
No worries. It's awesome sharing this. It's time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Feminist Founders Podcast. If you like what you heard and want to learn more, or if you'd like to support the work that I'm doing with the show, please visit feministfounderspodcast.com. There you can find out about becoming a paid subscriber for as little as the price of 1 cup of coffee a month, which will directly support my work. Thanks again, and I can't wait for our next episode.